welcome to the Daft Souls podcast. It's me, Matt Lees, joined by Quentin Smith.
Hello, Matt Lees.
And the beautiful Joe Scrabbles.
Hello, Matt Lees and Quentin Smith.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Excellent. This week we're going to have a much better podcast. I can only apologise for last week.
Last week was fine.
It
People
was
liked
fine,
it.
but at the beginning I was awful.
You need to stop apologising, man. You're great.
No,
You're flying high.
I got into it in the end, but at the beginning I listened back. Sorry, Jim, I'm just touching your legs already.
Quite all right.
That's a great start.
This is even better. I like it more than last week.
Because you're here and I'm
there's
touching...
physical touch.
Physical touch. No, it was fine. I listened back to the first 5 minutes and I was like a bad paxman, just going, why is it good? I don't think it's good. I don't like Street Fighter.
That is a bad paxman.
Yeah.
He does like Street Fighter.
He loves it. He'd be like, tell me about E Honda now.
I talked a little bit about this in the, not to dive into the game's paddling pool and get it all wet and sloppy. So
Paddling
early.
pools are already wet.
Yeah, it is.
Unless, like, it's a dry one and you're wet, and that's weird.
So I've been playing some Street Fighter 5, and I don't have much to say about it yet, aside from the fact that I think I'm going to learn how to play Chun-Li. She's got really good thighs. And the animation's all amazing. But the thing I find about it is really interesting, because you remember last week I was saying that Capcom have done all this stuff to make Street Fighter 5 feel like an esport, like a place you're going to be spending loads of time. Poking the story mode, the thing I find most amazing about it is it has a tonality that is completely unique of any
Well, they
Street Fighter
haven't
game
done
I've
the
ever
single
played.
player of it right out, have they? They've just released the
No,
competitive
they have released the single player. People are complaining because the single player is so thin. It's like a sheet of, tissue paper or something.
It's very much like just kill 12 people, you've done it.
Yeah, what you don't have is the training mode where it walks you through and drills combos and stuff, which it desperately needs.
Yes.
But the thing it has, like, Joe, you need to be Ken in this situation, and I'll be Ryu.
Okay.
The opening cutscene is something along the lines of, hey, Ken, that was a great fight.
Yes.
Wasn't it good? Mm-hmm. I think we should both train real hard.
Okay.
I think we could be the best one day.
Let me put on my gi.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, but the thing that it does when all the fighters are just
what happens next?
Well, I'll tell you what happens. They have a fight.
Shit.
And Ryo wins. But when Ken loses, he's like, I'll beat you one day. And it's the thing that it carries. I mean, there are still some bad guys, and like M. Bison's weird crew is there. And a weird wibbly man who looks like he came from Nightmare Before Christmas. I couldn't even describe him. He's called Fang. You got to see pictures. But it generally creates this atmosphere that fighting is fun. If you lose, that's okay because you learn from it. And I swear to God, they are doing it to give the game a positive online community.
Well, to try to, I suppose.
To try, like, as a sort of bit of sleight of hand to try and be like, hey, those fighters you like playing as, they're all real nice to each other. So you should be nice too. We should all fight as friends.
Work. I mean, I
don't know if it'll work.
They tried to do that in Hearthstone, didn't they? By being like, hey, let's not let players talk to each other. But no, people just...
They just click threaten over and over again.
Dick finds a way.
Yeah, that is the worst. The nice play, until you throw the iPad out of the window.
Well played. Yeah, no, that's just infuriating. I'd rather have somebody just call me a cock.
You can't call anyone anything in Street Fighter.
No, I mean, that's the best. Don't let anyone talk to me. That's like my motto. That's my middle name.
That's why Splatoon's the best shooter ever made.
I need to play some Splatoon.
What I was trying to get to last week, because that's the main problem, is I was like kind of I was trying to like interrogate you about what the game was like in the state of play, but it just came out as me going, why? What? I don't believe you.
That's okay. We can play hardball.
But this is great because you've already answered something about the fact that like they haven't implemented this sort of training stuff yet. That's what I was asking about. I was trying to get down to this idea of you were talking about how it was a cool ecosystem for learning and getting into it, and I wanted to know whether or not it was there. And it sounds like it isn't. Well, you've got a friend who's really good at Street Fighter who's going to train you. Like
you know what, Matt? This will all be answered and more in a podcast that's going live in just a few days. I don't know what it's called yet, but it'll be somewhere.
Potatoes.
It's not called that.
No, I was just
ever. Oh, that was an exclamation, right?
But you should call it hot potatoes.
No,
with Quentin Smith.
No. So it's just going to be me and a friend of mine who is like excruciatingly good at Street Fighter, walking through like a sort of maybe 10-episode Rocky style training montage where I try and be. I've changed my mind. I'm not because you talked me down. You talked me from 10% down to 25% of the top players in the world. I'm going to go back up to top 10% of the players in the world.
Top 10. I'm sure you're on 15 to begin with.
No, top 10%, as in, so if you get it, right?
No, I get it, yeah. I understand maths.
I was on 15 to begin with, then I went to 25 because you said that sounded hard, but now I've doubled
10.
down on 10%. Because, shoot for the sky, and even if I miss, I'm still a hero.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be good. I mean, it's the sort of thing where although I'm not interested personally in trying to get into Street Fighter, as are lots of people, I'm very much interested in trying to live through that experience vicariously via the medium of a podcast.
I think there are people out there like me who don't want to sit in a room drilling combos for ages and getting beaten up by people online, but I would be really interested in learning how the mechanics work together and how you get good and what you think about, and I'm going to do it. So all of your questions about Street Fighter will be answered in just a few days.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll go to coolghost.net and we'll have that on the site somewhere, probably really visible-ish.
Hopefully.
Meanwhile, it'll be on the main page. And yeah.
Joe, though.
Yeah.
You said you've played or reviewed how many games in the last 2 weeks?
I've played and finished, barring one game, I've played and finished 6.
Okay, here's what I would suggest.
Yes.
This is your moment.
Okay.
This is your podcast. Matt and I, we're just observers.
This is your podcast.
Scrub special.
Moment with you.
It's the Scrub special, yeah.
Okay.
I like how that came to you so quickly that you almost certainly have been fantasizing about this moment for years.
Well, yeah, but I should have said Scrashel.
Oh.
It would have sounded more like an alien.
Can we not call it Scrab the Decks?
We could call it Scrub the Decks.
Rub down to the deepest of games and get them clean?
What?
Doesn't work.
No.
Jettison joke. Jettison.
Let's call it Hot Potato.
Yes.
Oh, dear me.
Right, am I getting into this? I've got 6 games on this list that I wrote because I was going to forget one of the games, and I think one of them you don't want to talk about.
Okay.
So I'll name 5.
What's the game we're not talking about?
Firewatch, because you are personally connected to this game.
Because they're our good buddies.
Yes. So I've played Flame in the Flood, which is a sort of stressless survival game.
See, I want to know if that's good because I'm hopefully going to try and get a review copy so I can play it because it's a roguelite. Well, I do them.
Let me tell you, it's mixed.
Yeah,
I've heard it's mixed.
I dived into it for early access because I was going to put it in Steam Surfers a while back, my roundup of new Steam games, and I played it and went, no.
Yeah, so the aesthetic appeals to me hugely because I really like Americana and music associated with it.
Should we describe what the heck Flame in the Flood is?
Yeah, so imagine a survival game set at the end of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Nice.
That's the whole game. You are on a giant flooded, well, it seems like the world, but the way the river you're in is, it seems like you're in a flooded valley, which you're travelling down constantly, making stops off in procedurally generated little hub areas that are still above water.
Yeah, I would describe those hub areas as like Don't Starve, but with a slightly annoying 3D engine without the clarity it needs.
Yes, and also the Don't Starve comparison implies that there's a sort of static element, which there isn't. You're never building anything. You're looting and leaving. That's the whole thing is about sort of thrusting you down this river. And actually the most effective way to play the game is to get stocks of everything you need and then just stay on your raft for as long as possible and then get off, get shelter, eat and drink and then set off again. So it has this quite fast-paced feeling for a roguelike survival game.
Yeah, it's funny when you're blasting down the river as well. I remember sometimes you'd see locations like a church or something and you'd go, oh, I want to go there. But actually, because of the momentum of the river and where you place yourself, you just get shot past the church.
Exactly. You get this sort of tiny action element, which is you'll see like a fork in the river coming up and you'll go, well, I can see that like down one end there might be a church down there which is good for shelter but not much else, and down the other one there's wilderness which can have really great stuff but also is wolf infested.
So many annoying wolves.
Wolves are fucking annoying. They will give you staph infections and lacerate you, and except never eat your dog who's with you the whole time, which is weird. So would be if you give someone a pet dog in a game, I don't think you can have it. There's plenty of dogs getting killed in games now.
I suppose, immediately.
Except actually, now that I think about it, most of the dogs don't die in Mad Max or Fallout 4.
Come back and find your dogs.
Oh, I was going to...
wolves.
Okay,
that's
right.
Awesome.
Well, that would be cool.
So the things that, I found interesting about it generally tended not to resolve themselves when I played it. I'd love to know if this isn't the case. So, like, the top 3 things, we've got, like, this aesthetic that's very, like, stylized, angular people and places, which I kind of got tired of relatively quickly because it didn't do much with it?
No, I think the general feeling of the thrust of the game is to build a survival game in which you don't feel constantly stressed.
Yeah,
which is my problem with survival in general. Is Don't Starve is I love Don't Starve, and I find it actually quite therapeutic, but sort of it's that thing where if you're so left wing, you go around to being right wing. Yeah. It's like it's so stressful that it becomes therapeutic trying to deal with
like
it.
Super Hexagon almost. Where
exactly.
You're in such a hellscape that, or Devil Daggers, right?
Yeah.
Where it's so awful, but you just get into a meditative loop because you can't think about
imagine getting there with Devil Daggers. Frankly,
no,
I've not played Devil Daggers.
I've only been playing it whilst quite unwell, to the point that actually it's like it's fine, but then as soon as I get past like 50 seconds, it becomes so stressful that afterwards I feel physically a bit sick.
I've heard some EVE Online players saying that after some fleet fights, they actually have to walk away from the computer and lie down.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the amazing thing about Devil Daggers. I just, in podcast recording time, I just put a video online on the website. You should check it out. It's pretty weird. It's
an amazing video. I
had a lot of fun making it. It was a strange video. Sort of wanted to get the spirit of the game across, which is just hell. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, it's an incredible thing, and so much of it is audio. I think the audio design in that game is just phenomenal. Playing with headphones, it's just like hellish, guttural, glitchy roars in your ears and chittering and and I think
that wonderful lo-fi glitchy aesthetic as well, where all the enemies are about 7 voxels floating towards you.
yeah, incredible. Like and it packs a lot of details into that though. Even though it's like very low detail, you can always see enough of what you need to know what you have to do and what's going on. But then it's still very obtuse. It's actually very like Dark Souls in a way that it's massively obtuse systems that you have to just either work out from watching other people or just experimenting on your own. Mm-hmm. Incredibly unforgiving but simple systems, and the fact that it just absolutely ruthlessly uses audio to make the game harder, and the fact that like the sorts of people who I see who are doing tremendously well at Devil Daggers are clearly sorts of people who are able to just switch off the part of their brain that just becomes freaked out by audio like that and is able to just pick it apart as being the sensory information they need to determine where enemies are. Whereas I cannot do that. As soon as it's like I'm surrounded by roaring and chittering stuff, I'm just going while spinning around madly trying to shoot shit. It's a great little game, and it's only like £4 as well, which is the sort of game where really after you've played it for a couple of hours, you'll probably be done with it. But yeah, great.
Like Luftrausers.
Absolutely perfect in terms of being like, buy this, play it for an evening or two. Probably done with it then, but like, man, what a time.
Yeah. Back to
the relatively stressless Flame in the Flood. So yeah, with regard to the aesthetic, I don't think it's trying to go anywhere with it apart from just to kind of give you this very hazy, like quite accented look at a place, and that goes along with the music, which is very slide guitar and occasionally a man going and like that's kind of it. So yeah, that's how I felt about that.
Yeah, okay.
Number 2.
So yes, it's got the aesthetic, which like you say, it's not very ambitious with it.
Yeah.
But then you have your dog companion, which is actually a pretty unique stripe for a survival game. But that doesn't seem to go anywhere with that.
Dog doesn't do anything. And dog is a pack.
But then you have this mobile home of the raft, which is of course going down the river with you. But I didn't feel there was much flex in being able to design or upgrade or change.
There are raft upgrades, and they're quite hard to get. So it becomes a thing, and the places where you the one place where you can upgrade your raft is a fairly rare instance. So when you find one, you just really hope that you've stocked up enough stuff, and at the last place you weren't forced to like chuck out all your raft schematics, whatever they are that you carry around, in favour of like some rags, because you had to make a splint.
See, we've just got so many survival games now that I'm looking at Flame in the Flood and going, why am I playing this over any other additions to Don't Starve, or The Long Dark, which is so evocative? And
No, I mean it's I've heard mixed things, and especially from early access read-ups and stuff, the idea that maybe it just needed something there for the full release to kind of tie it together. It sounds like it's not there.
I think the story mode, which was added for the full release, adds a little. There's not much to it. It's just kind of get halfway down the river and find this one thing, and then get the whole way down the river and find this other thing. But it gives you enough of a push, and there's some
to tug you along.
Yeah, and there's people you meet along the way, and little environmental elements that hint at what might have happened.
That sounds cool.
That's quite nice. And with regard to there's a million survival games. There are. I think this is aiming at people who don't currently play them and aren't interested in them.
Okay.
I think it's demographic.
I like kind of roguelike-y things, but I'm not a big survival.
Well, then maybe this is you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give it a go.
I think it's very pleasant, but it's just not, like you say, it's not deep. It doesn't go far with it.
I'll tell you something weird about the aesthetic, though, and it might just be me, but I feel like in the same way it kind of happened with pixel art and its resurgence, I feel like there's just been a barrier that's literally in the past month has just clicked in my head of being like, it's gone from being like these kind of games that are almost done in a kind of loose, angular, Instagram-esque coloured style, I've just gone from being like, oh, that's nice, to being like, I'm bored of that now. Because I just feel like, and it's always the way with these sort of zeitgeist things, lots of devs have set out to do this sort of style at once, because it was, when they started, it was a fresh idea.
Do you mean sort of like Knights and Bikes as well?
Yes, I know. And what's interesting
Night in the
is...
Woods.
Yeah, I mean, Night in the Woods, I think, has its own thing going on. That's actually got quite a strong aesthetic, so it isn't just vague with it. So I think, in my mind, that's still like, I'm still interested. But it was interesting playing Oxenfree. I quite liked it, but I kind of felt this sort of like, I'm kind of bored of this presentation style. I've been playing too many games like that. And Knights and Bikes, which is now on Kickstarter, weirdly, that was almost like I just gone too far with it. And when I looked at that, I just thought, I've kind of got like loads of games that look a bit like this available now, and I'm not interested in another one.
So let me turn this train around on the tracks, which you can't do with a wheel train, but you can with this because it's a metaphor. Let's talk about a style that I don't think has outstayed its welcome yet, which is this PSX super low-grade 3D.
Yeah.
Because that's in Devil Daggers and used to great extent, and I've been playing a completely awesome horror game recently, which I'll tell you about and try, and then we'll get back on Scrabbles.
That's fine.
The Scrabbles Canyon. I'm going to load up.
But I think it's weird because it's not fair. It's this weird thing of being like, yeah, sorry, that aesthetic's been used up now, so it doesn't matter if your game is good or not. I kind of am not interested in it. Whereas, like, there's something, as you say, this PSX vibe with Devil Daggers. It's just exciting.
It's that weird thing of, it's success breeds success. So you get, it was the old joke of like cyan and orange movie posters.
Yeah.
And yes, the same thing. It's just like no one's fault. And some of those movies were great, but just for some reason, everyone's brains went like that. And then after a while, everyone went, fuck that.
But I just wonder if it's a wider thing or if it's just me for now. So do let us know, sort of thing, on the comments and on the website on Cool Ghost, if you're somebody who equally has just suddenly gone, it's just hit a peak for now, and I'm just like looking at these games and going, I'm not interested.
Or let us know if you enjoy the sort of like saccharine spectrum of nice colours and big heads.
I think maybe I've just been spending too much time playing that kind of game instead of but it's very interesting how I've just gone from like saccharine fun stuff to just hell now. I want more hell.
Okay, so if you want more hell, you have to play this. It's Anatomy.
Looks scary, Quinn.
Why don't you guys describe what the screenshots?
I want to go to hell, but I don't want to be frightened.
One of them's like a table from the TV show Reboot, but in the dark. In fact, it all looks a bit like Reboot, the Canadian TV series.
You're making it sound like... Is it Canadian?
I think so. I think it's Canadian.
Wow.
It's like
maybe I just like to think it is.
To put the lights in.
Yeah, there's no...
It looks like a GoldenEye quality house. It's super... This is from a designer called Kitty Horror Show. She came to my attention... I think it's a she. It came to my attention when she was being written about on Killscreen and Offworld last year. She makes really lo-fi horror games that you can get on itch.io, pay whatever you want, and they are all so good. So, Joe, I started playing Anatomy today, and I went, horror game, great. Close the curtains, headphones on. And all it is, it has this super creepy VHS, like...
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of like, it's poorly lit VHS. But it comes across as looking like a really low budget horror film in a way.
It's as if the aesthetic is as if you're looking at the game through a camcorder and there's VHS flickers, as if you're holding the camcorder in front of your face.
Yeah.
And the camcorder cannot deal with light very well. It's one of the most weirdly lit games I've ever played because you're kind of like projecting light in a sort of orb. So if you're in the kitchen, you can maybe see the kitchen counter next to you, but you can never see the other end of the room, which means you're almost blind. And you're walking through a house, and the house has almost nothing in it. And the whole game, all it is, Joe, all it is. You go into the kitchen, and there's a tape player and an old cassette tape from when we were kids. And you pop it in, and it's a sort of philosophical recording of a man talking about the house. And what is the house? Well, it can be said that the house is almost like the humans that inhabit it, of all the things humans build, the house is the most interesting. And if the house is like a living thing, then, well, the living room is like the heart where we all travel. And then a thing comes saying, a tape has appeared in the living room. And then the VHS thing clicks off and you have to go to the living room and find a tape. Then you take it back and then it starts walking you all the way around the house, which is completely normal until it's not, telling you how the house is basically alive. And then it just goes more and more and more wrong. Halfway through it, I took my headphones off and had to open the curtain and use my speakers because I was so scared. And then it did something really interesting, which I've never found from a horror game before. And this isn't really a spoiler because it tells you to play it again and the thing. You finish it. It ends abruptly in a horrible way, and then the readme that comes with the game says, play it again, and you start playing it again, and it's the same, except this time when you play the tape, it's massively distorted, and the text that pops up saying there's a tape in the living room starts having typos in it and weird typographical errors, and I was so scared, I closed it and have not played it again since.
That sounds really unpleasant.
It's absolutely awesome, man. But this is the thing, horror games in general and as a genre rely so much on jump scares and things chasing you and shit action sequences, whereas Kitty Horror Show is able to craft unbelievable terror from... I'm not going to say there aren't any monsters in it, but certainly like not much action sequences. Like there is nothing but what is in your head.
Yep.
And purely based on what was in my own head, I had to stop playing.
It's just creeping dread. I mean, that's where horror is strongest. Like
I agree.
I still remember the best bit. It wasn't a particularly good horror game by any means, and I don't think anyone would argue with me on that. But the best bit of Dead Space 2, which was unfortunately the game which I entered the Dead Space series.
That's a bummer. I like the first.
In regards, in history, I think would deem that to be a mistake. But whatever it was, and I didn't find it scary at all up until the point where you had to go back to the ship from the first game to get something. And I'd never played the first game, but it was like you need to go back to whatever it's called, Ishimura or whatever. Like,
oh, well remembered.
I think it was. That might
Ishimura,
be something else.
Sounds right.
Anyway, you had to go back to get something off the ship, and immediately it was like, oh, the environment design here is much better. But also, it had this period where for like 20 minutes, nothing attacked you. Like, nothing happened. It was just sound. And for an action game where you're literally fighting stuff all the time for ages, to then have like a good 20, 25 minutes of no combat whatsoever, just noises, and it was unbearable. That at the point when something jumped out and there was a fight, it was a relief. And that's, in a way, like, that's wrong. Like, it shouldn't be that. I'm like, oh, thank God.
No, but if you watch, like, did you watch Babadook?
I haven't yet.
Oh, okay.
But you recommended it, so
it's unreal. It's outrageously good and clever for all these reasons. But that is a movie where, by the time you see a monster, like, it is that, oh, this is the worst thing ever, but also thank God, because now my head has a shape to give this.
Yeah. I mean, I found that the film that messed me up the most over the years was obviously The Shining. Actually, surprisingly, like I went to it being like, yeah, it's supposed to be a really classic scary film, and I watched it and it was like, oh my fucking God, this is actually really frightening. But the film that messed me up the most was The Orphanage, which is
that's a good film.
Because again, like there aren't. Yeah, I won't say any more, but man, and that's just a different.
There's a couple of The Orphanages, I think I might be right in saying, but people want to look for the Spanish
one. Yeah. There'll be a remake, I'm sure.
That's also a film that revolves around one key moment of real in your face something horrible is on screen.
Yes,
and that's why it shits you up. Because the rest of the film's quite quiet and it's a drama, essentially.
Yeah, but it's just that thing of just tightening you up, ratcheting it up.
Are we talking about the scene where she plays the game?
I wasn't talking about that, but that's...
Yeah, no, we'll get into...
I'm not going to...
But you should totally watch it. I mean, I first time I saw it at the cinema, and I left the cinema like feeling like I'd been in a car crash.
Watch The Orphanage, watch Babadook, and watch Shutter as well.
Yeah, spend a weekend just fucking yourself up. But it's interesting, this actually just... does remind me of Spanish film Wreck.
Wreck, yeah, no.
Obviously, it was popular. There've been more, and they're kind of crap, and there've been remakes, and it's kind of crap. But again, it's that wonderful thing of it gets around with horror. It gets around
the found footage thing.
Yeah, well,
holy shit! By the way, I watched Blair Witch for the first time, and it was like when I watched Rocky, and it was like, this isn't just sort of...
this is actually
This isn't a cliche. It's like, holy shit, all other films that have done found footage have never been as good as Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen Blair Witch?
I have not.
The ending is one of the worst things I've ever seen. It's,
I genuinely don't want to watch it because I think it's going to frighten me too much. But but again, I think that's a clever thing. The clever thing about Wreck and found footage films in general, when they started doing them, was it was cheap. And if you're if you're recording with a camera, like a VHS camera, it means that things you don't need the special effects to look that great. And it's cool to see that basically reflected in this, of being like, if you make things look a bit fuzzy and the lighting's bad, then it means it tricks the brain. You don't spend your time going, God, this looks rubbish. You just you get into the vibe.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
I want to
carry on.
I want to push things back towards Joe, not because this conversation isn't awesome.
You just want more Joe,
but because I said this was the Screbs cast.
I'm going to follow on
the
from this
Potato
conversation
Podcast
incredibly neatly. It's going to be great. Have either of you played Layers of Fear?
Yes.
What did you think of Layers of Fear? I really love it.
Oh, do you?
Let's
talk about
Layers of Fear.
I'm really excited to talk about then. So Layers of... Well, I did the last spiel. Do you want to go for what this is?
Layers of Fear is a sort of, what's increasingly becoming a post-PT game where you are in a sort of haunted space, and the space is the worst thing about it, is in a horror sense. But Layers of Fear transposes PT's like insane, surreal, like scratching dread into this like quite arch and gothic and slightly silly situation where you're a painter in this sort of unspecified, maybe the 50s, but in a much older house time. Yeah. And he's clearly losing his mind, but also being haunted.
You think he's being haunted?
Well,
okay.
That's the story tussle throughout the thing.
And there's a wonderful beat where very early on, and I think in any screenshots you'd see, that there are works of art around the house that are awful, and it becomes clear, I mean, you're the artist in the house, which means you drew them, which means that when you see art that's super messed up, it's like, oh yes, of course I did that.
I did that.
Well, and it does really odd things. And the reason I like it so much is that a lot of its tricks, which are almost purely just... you turn around and then when you turn back, something's different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is easy. But most of its tricks make me smile as opposed to get frightened.
I played it with Lee and so we were like both spooked. And when something awful would happen, we'd both like shriek, but then laugh because it's so absurd.
But that's why I love it. I love this. I love this. Like,
sounds like a ghost house.
Yeah, it is.
Like in a kind of.
But then there's also that what's that one? 1001 Rooms of Horror. The thing else. It doesn't matter. I'll remember it in a bit.
I don't know that one. But so it does. It just does.
It's a horror game which is absolutely following the ghost house aesthetic. It just like it's very silly, but equally it tries to make you laugh and shit yourself at the same time.
So it's like it does that thing where you're waiting for a thing to happen. When it happens, you shriek and then you laugh. And something about that really worked for me. Not least because doing it through a lot of the time through art is really interesting because you'll see a picture across the room and you'll walk up to it and they knew that the developers are playing the ghost prodding you to the thing to give you the scare. Like that's their whole role in this. So they know that you're going to go to this well-lit painting and look closely at it, and then either it's going to melt or, you turn around and the door's really close, or you turn around and the painting is there as well, but it's just massive, or through the open door in the room, the face from the painting is staring through at you, and then you turn back to the other painting and it's got really far away.
I really like, and this, again, not really a spoiler, because there are just hundreds of these, but I like the one where you're in the library and... you turn around and a man is running at you unbelievably fast and you scream, but then just immediately collapses and you realise he was made of books. So it's a man running towards you, but then about 6 feet away he just collapses.
So wait, did you play Early Access?
Yeah.
So it's a completely different game.
Is it?
Yeah. Early Access is a different game. That moment is not in my Layers
and also,
of Fear.
well, it's not in anyone's Layer of Fear because presumably they can't get access to the Early Access build now because it's not early
I guess not
enough.
So I've never seen that.
Oh, man.
So you've played different games.
Yeah.
Which is the real layer.
Exactly. There's so many layers.
Oh,
it's like a terrifying onion.
Okay, but all right, I completely get your argument, and that's a great reason to love it. For me, though, it was kind of a bummer playing it because with PT especially, and with Kitty Horror Show stuff, there is so much horror out there right now that is just good as hell, and people really digging into some wonderful stuff that only games can do. And then you play Layers of Fear, and everything is cheap. It's like, to use the second reference to Joe Bluth and as many weeks for stuff that Matt and I have worked on. It's the Joe Bluth of horror games of just like, you look around and the thing has disappeared. I mean, I like that. It's fun and it's scary. Because
I'm thinking about that, and it's really interesting hearing you guys talk about it, because it sort of reminds me of an element of horror. I'm not really too au fait with horror, to be honest.
Neither am I.
But I have found that there are different types of horror experiences. There are things where you genuinely sit there and go and get scared. But I've had a couple of times watching horror movies round with friends where there's almost like the campy horror of it not just being like, oh, that made me jump, but of, oh, that made me jump, and then you laugh, especially with people. Like there's an incredible live show, which I won't say anything about because that's kind of the point, but I saw Ghost Stories.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, and like, again, that was for a lot of that, the fun thing was it would, scenes would end with something really scary.
Yeah, until
and everyone go, until
the end is like one of the most, I still get shivers to this day thinking about it.
I'm shivering right now just thinking about it. Fucking hell. But I mean, it's really worth seeing if you can get tickets when it's on.
It's in London, yeah.
It's amazing live show.
Nice bit of sleight of hand in it as well, yeah. It's just wonderful staging.
It's some great stuff. But again, it's that there is something kind of fun about being like, you looking for the jump, and then you knowing where the jump's going to happen, and then something obvious happens, and you kind of get a bit scared, but then you laugh. And I think there's actually, I mean, obviously Ghost Stories is more than that, and that's why it's amazing. But I think that is a kind of horror tradition, which maybe video games often, when they try and do horror, they take it a bit too seriously.
I don't think they take it too seriously. I think there are just different stripes of it, right?
Yeah.
I think what you guys will play and enjoy is different. But for example, one of the reasons, did you play Soma?
No, and I'm fully.
Soma is amazing because
we talked. I've never mentioned this in the podcast before, but we talked about how, like, when we talked about Soma ages ago, I said, "Oh, it'd be amazing if they could just make it so the enemies don't attack you."
They've got that now.
Somebody's literally done that as a mod.
Really?
Apparently, the game, people have played it like for the first time, and they've done it with that, and they say it's still quite scary because these things are just walking around and they're terrifying to look at.
That's interesting. Yeah, there are certainly some beats that turns it into an absolute ghost train. That's great. But so the interesting thing about that, and the reason I had to publicly apologise for being like, it's a bit too similar to that last stuff on Cool Ghosts, is that by the end, the psychological horror, what we were talking about before, that absolutely not laughing, creeping, oh God, let me think about this for a moment, is so bad and so well crafted. Like, Layers of Fear, I guess, disappointed me, but that's not a thing against the developers. It's just right now I'm looking for stuff that will truly unsettle me.
Yeah, it won't do that. Like, so again, another thing I liked about it is that it doesn't rely on jumps. It's not doing the you're looking for a jump. It just does sometimes subtle, sometimes completely unsubtle changes to your environment. So it's just keeping you spinning around, looking at new things.
That sounds different from early access, because early access by like an hour in was a jump scare every 30 seconds.
There are jumps in there, and the worst thing it does is it straight rips PT's Lisa. Like, there is a manky lady who grabs you from behind, and there's like weird squelchy noises, and then you appear somewhere else. Like, that sucks. And they use that like 4 times, and it's really irritating because some of their stuff is so inventive. And the bit that really cemented it for me, and I have no idea if this was present in the early access, there's a bit where after all of this sort of surreal, like, things have appeared in the wrong place and ceilings have disappeared and they go on forever.
It's a mad uncle fucking around
again,
exactly.
Isn't it? There's one bit where you go to a basement and all you can really see is sort of covered crates and broken chairs and just shit. Clearly this family has just chucked all this crap down here.
I remember that basement, yeah.
Okay, and there's a piano at the other end.
Yeah.
And you obviously go up and go, and it starts playing this quite gentle piano song. And you turn around and all that's happened is gravity's turned off.
Wow.
And for about 30 seconds, everything in the room just floats. And there's this quite nice piano tune, and you walk around, you just push a crate and like move a chair around, and nothing happens. And it's not scary, and it's not designed to be scary.
It's just a moment.
It's just a moment of like weird beauty.
That's great.
And then after the piano song finishes, everything goes clonk, and you walk out, and there's a new door. And I think that's wonderful. Like there's a satisfaction in the tricks they're pulling on you that I find really pleasant. Like, it feels like the developers are having fun with you.
Well, that's why what I loved about the Stanley Parable is, like, obviously I like the writing and I like the ideas, and when it got super meta it was fun, but actually sometimes it was just like you immediately got what was happening, and then you just felt like you were going along for a fun ride with something, and you're like, this is cool, I like this.
Yeah, and one of the other games I played this week was Dr. Langeskov, the Tiger and Terribly Cursed Emerald, which can't really talk about too much without ruining it for people.
It is really important to make sure you leave with the correct emerald.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Because otherwise you don't get the good ending.
Exactly, you need the terribly cursed one.
Yeah.
That's a great little game, though. I enjoyed that a lot.
And just, although weirdly, I got my girlfriend to play it afterwards, and on the second playthrough, there's an element that's added.
Really?
Just a very small thing, but I'm watching someone and going, oh, I hope you have the same experience I did. Totally ruins it. If it's someone's first playthrough
on the same account,
totally ruins it.
Interesting,
really odd.
Well, I suppose people don't expect that, especially on Steam.
The thing I think that is most interesting about this, and I guess this is kind of damning to say this, but what I think is most interesting is that when they sent it to streamers who they knew would, push the game out to God knows how many people, they customized the build for every streamer. Not for everyone they sent it to necessarily, but like for the biggest names, they made a custom version of the game for that streamer, which obviously would have pushed it. It made it unique and interesting for people to watch, and I think that was just the smartest marketing.
What did it do?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons, but yeah, mostly I don't know.
That's really weird. But yeah, to me that's another game that. Yeah, as you say, has that satisfaction of...
Yeah, you kind of know what's going on and you're just along for a ride, but you kind of feel like you're having fun and they know that. And yeah, it's kind of strange to have that relationship, like where almost... I mean, obviously that's the whole idea of a game.
Okay.
Dev makes a game and they want you to have fun, then you have fun, but it's different. It's like a shared experience. It's almost like role-playing in a way. If like you feel like you're in a room with somebody else and they're kind of nodding you and going, and you feel like there's someone almost there you can turn around to and go, oh, very good. I know what you're doing here. All right, yeah.
Man, to continue looking down from my ivory tower and be like, I like horror that's serious. I like Dr. Langscoff's thing.
Cape.
because I can't play that without, like, for me, Dr. Langscoff is, and this is unfair because it's a whole team of people, but it exists purely to show me what part of Stanley Parable was William Pugh.
Yes, yeah.
And what part was Davey. And then playing Beginner's Guide, and then...
it is incredible how clear the dichotomy is between those two.
It's really unbelievable. Strange. But for me, and Dr. Langscoff obviously was a free game and not necessarily their big project, but like, I only ever hold it up to Beginner's Guide, and Beginner's Guide was maybe my favourite game from last year.
Okay.
So it's tough.
I think I prefer Dr. Langscoff. I think the general... Like, we can't talk about either of them. You can't talk about either of those fucking games.
I think
so irritating.
I thought about this a lot, and I think I kind of did as well. Like, I mean, the Beginner's Guide was really something. I get what you're saying, Quince, and it's not like I disagree, but it's a tough one. But I think what the difference was, like, and this is obviously not a good way to look at things, but I found Langscoff to be entertaining. And I had fun with it. Whereas the thing about the Beginner's Guide, it's very difficult to talk about, but I found it like it was an experience, and I'm glad I had it, but it wasn't enjoyable, and what I walked away from it wasn't enjoyable. And I also feel like it was one of those interesting things where like it kind of almost, and this is interesting, but it kind of had a negative impact on me. And I think that's interesting. And I think as an exploration of ideas and stuff, it was interesting, but it was one of those things where I think that the takeaway it gave me was very negative and actually affected me adversely for a number of days. And I think that maybe is like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it.
Okay, well, just for me, I mean, I get that. But like playing Beginner's Guide I was just in awe of how different and how clever and
sure.
And for me, like I walked away from that game like basking in the glow of like, it's similar to what we described when we go to GDC and you finish that week going, I'm so happy I work in games. This is an unbelievable medium. The people here are amazing. And I got that from Beginner's Guide. I left Beginner's Guide going like, we can do anything with games. This is the best.
I left it as a creator just feeling incredibly depressed. But hey, that's cool. I mean, it's how rare is it that you have games that you can even have a conversation like that?
I think I know who Coda is.
I think everybody knows who Coda is. Anyway.
What's next on the list?
Well, to swing right to the other end of things, Far Cry Primal.
Oh man, yeah, I actually saw you'd reviewed this.
I could not believe that game was out.
I know, it's weird, right?
Like, honestly, it was one of these things where I've seen it kind of like, yeah, this game's coming out, yeah, here's a preview, and then suddenly it's like, it's out already? Like, they are really popping them out.
So we know it's average.
Yes.
What's the best bit?
The best bit is being able to ride a saber-toothed tiger that you've tamed.
Like He-Man!
After it killed tons of your tribe members, being able to go out and have a you have to have a fight, like a boss battle over the course of 3 in-game days to tame this thing, and then it's yours for the rest of the game. And that's
awesome.
Exactly. That was the point where I was like, Far Cry Primal's really doing something, and then it did nothing else.
I did love you. I think I read your review, and I think I did read your review, and it was that thing of talking about how it's like, you know, when you just burst through some trees on your saber-toothed tiger, and then like all the enemies who are shit enemies just run away because they're terrified. That is something that games don't do often enough. And I loved it in Shadows of Mordor, the way you could just turn up and really horribly stab up one goblin and just watch all the other goblins go, fuck this! And I love how I mean, it was actually like a genuinely really unpleasant thing. If it wasn't a goblin in that game, like, fuck me. If you did that to a human, it would just be like, I can't play this.
Exactly.
This is actually terrifying.
Yeah, very weird, especially because the orcs and goblins in Shadows of Mordor have more heart and personality than humans in other games.
Yeah, that was one of those weird games though, when you had like all these think pieces coming and being like, man, is this a horrendous allegory for terrorism? It's like, yes, actually no, this think piece is not just a ridiculous hot take. It's weirdly, horribly bang on.
Again, weirdly bringing up GDC, but I think I was the only person in the room that found this funny. But when we were at the it was like not the IGF, but the award ceremony that predated the IGF, like on that evening, it's like 1,000 people in a room watching these games receive awards, and it was like this indie game has won an award, and one like sort of dour teenage boy comes up and collects the award, and then it's like, and this game has won an award, and again like the programmer / designer / artist comes up and gets an award. It's like, and now Shadows of Mordor, and 80 men with long hair filed up to the thing like a conscription queue for a Russian army or something.
Like the Nemesis screen.
Yes, it's all bundling up. But it was like just the line went on forever. It was like, and just all of them slowly walking past the podium one by one, and it was just, it was funny, but also like there was real. That moment meant something of like, sort of what games have always been represented by these men, and then also like, and here's a very lightweight, simple future.
Sort of though. I think in a way,
I'm not saying either one's bad. It was just funny.
I know it was, but I felt differently about that because in a way, for me, especially with those guys, it's like you know, because it's made by Monolith, right? And I'm kind of making this story up in my head, I've got to be honest, but it's like, it's great when you have these bright young things, like, you know, IGF being won by, what was it called? Out of Bounds?
Outer Wilds.
Outer Wilds, that's it.
Which I played since then, and yeah, it's ace.
Yeah, precisely. Like, and, you know, these bright young things who are just, like, kind of taking over the world with brilliant ideas, and they're going to shape the future, and that's fucking awesome. When you've got these, like, young, excitable people standing up on stage and going, oh my God, you know, they just cannot believe it. It's so cool, it's so exciting. But in a way, like, this isn't like fucking Epic Games standing up on a stage and being like, yeah, you guys sure did love Gears of War again. You know, the thing about Monolith is they've been one of those developers who just always put out good stuff.
They made fucking amazing games. They made Blood.
Yeah, Fear. Like,
I replayed Fear recently. They fucking amazing.
Consistently made like really good stuff for years, but never really had that kind of acclaim. They've never had.
Well, sorry, what the hell is Blood?
Blood is like an really old, dumb build engine post Duke Nukem game with like stupid weapons,
dynamite
and voodoo dolls and stuff. It's great,
but it was good. Yeah, I remember. Wasn't it Cowboys and Voodoos?
Yeah, it's
Cowboys and Voodoos.com.
Oh, it's great. But no, I don't know. It was like loads of old dudes, but it was like. It was kind of nice because I kind of got the impression that Monolith have been treated as being one of these studios owned by Warner Brothers, and they've kind of been like almost like, yeah, you know, these guys, they're reliable. They're kind of in that kind of like high grade B team of being like reliable. I mean, at this point, like if you're given like, make a kind of open world Lord of the Rings action game, like no one's really expecting anything from you. You know, you're basically a B team doing a license.
But it was Warner Brothers again, right? So it was at least the same studio that had created inexplicably Arkham Asylum.
Yes, but you look at the quality in terms of the amount of money that's been poured in Batman compared to the amount of money that was put into Shadows of Mordor.
Okay.
They are still definitely internally treated as being this kind of B team. And so for the fact that like guys who've been doing it for years and years, like late in their careers, now having this moment of like this recognition of going, hey, you guys made something fucking great.
Yeah.
Like that in a way, like, you know,
it's great.
Meant, like, I was really jazzed for those guys because I was just like, yeah, like you guys were on the cusp of just being completely forgotten by everybody, and you've just literally gone, no, let's pull up our socks and make something cool. And the whole world has gone, yeah, you made something really cool.
Yeah.
And now they're making, probably, I think they've announced Shadows of Mordor 2, haven't they?
I don't think they have, but
I mean, come on.
If they're not making it.
And hopefully, you know, they're going to get like a more Batman-y budget. And you know, they deserve that. And it's cool.
Well, it's weird. You run the risk of making up a narrative for a studio, but the thing that I look at with Monolith, well, the thing I look at with Monolith is when you play Fear, those, like, everyone talks about the AI in Fear to this day. And going back to it, you're like, holy shit, yeah, no, it is really weirdly, like, ahead of the curve and ahead of most shooters. Like, playing Far Cry Primal, no one acts like the guards in Fear in that.
Yeah,
no one's
you should go back and play Fear, man.
Yes, good.
Have you ever played Fear?
Yeah, I have,
Okay,
but I didn't like it for, some of the same reasons we covered.
It's a crap horror game.
It's a crap horror game. It's it's a horror game with a gun, which means either you'll be able to shoot anything that comes at you, which isn't scary, or you won't be able to shoot it, but it will cause you no harm, which is also not scary.
There's some middle ground though. I loved it when you got to like the fucking weird troopers on the walls. It was like some psyop shit. Like,
oh no, see, that's not. No, this is Layers of Fear again, right? It's just like me looking at this going, no.
I quite liked it. I just the shooting was.
I totally get it. Again, it's just not for me.
But either way, the thing that I look at with them is you trace the line between the AI in Fear and the Nemesis system in Shadow of Mordor. To me, this is a studio that cares as much about its NPCs as its player characters, and I think if that is the case, and if I'm not just making shit up, and maybe it's completely different groups of people who made those two games, but to me, that's like, here's a company, here's a studio being given shit to make and imprinting something of their own philosophies on it all the way through, and I think that is worth celebrating. Like, the idea that there's these giant groups of people who are still trying to make, like, things according
still trying to do something that is almost a lost art, like the idea of like everyone else has just given up on AI, like everyone's going, oh, you don't need to do it really, like you can just fudge it, like just make it so enemies pop their heads up and then you shoot them, but they always they've stuck to it. Anyway, I've played a bunch of things this week, but we've kind of talked enough about games, so I've actually had some time to play games, but
no, it's good. You can store them in the Matt Lee's barrel,
put them in the bank for later. And you played anything else, Joe? Oh, man of many games.
Let's just have a quick
look. Pop the phone out. He's a pro.
I should point out the rest of the Far Cry Primal thing was just me complaining about how
I kind of felt we were done with it. Really.
Limited.
Super limited. Okay.
Like it feels like a step back. Oh, I finished Undertale, which is fucking great. But we talked about that.
And I was saying to Quince, I almost made a joke about the end the other day, and I was like, I'd say if you have finished Undertale, right? And he didn't know. I was like, right, fucking do that.
I had a.
It's a thing, right?
Yes, and I had a very specific route to the ending I got, which I will talk to you about privately, which is really interesting, and the way it allows you to finish that game, especially on a first run, is really cool.
Did you not kill anything, right?
I did not kill anything, so that it's slightly spoiled by the fact that I knew that I should do that.
Well, but at the same time, it's kind of annoying though that you have to, that if you cock up once, then you cannot get the interesting ending on your first run, which is so annoying because really playing it again, that's a big ask.
Well, that's it. Like, and I do really want to do a kill everything run.
Oh man, I couldn't. Have you seen the effects?
I haven't.
Just watch the YouTube videos, and honestly, it's one of those few things where like it's amazing to have let's plays of it, because just find a let's play without any commentary.
Yeah,
no commentary. My two favorite words on YouTube search. Honestly, I couldn't live without it. But just find that and just watch some of it, because honestly, you'll watch a bit of it and you'll think, I can't do this. Like, it is so unpleasant.
I can imagine.
Like, you just go into towns and there's no shops or no people there because you killed them all.
Yeah.
Like, you've already fought them. Ugh. Okay, let's wrap this one up with a couple of questions. First, we've got a question from Vincent Stroll. Or Stoll, even, no Stroll. No, I'm reading the angle. I'm reading the questions here at a quite unlikely angle. Anyway.
Matt is sort of like twisted like an artist's model, because he has to face the mic but also look at the monitor behind him. So, he's doing the paint me like one of your French girls pose.
I am.
But vertically.
Yes.
Paint me vertically like one of your French girls.
Like one of your lopsided girls.
You've got a harder challenge here. Okay. Have you ever made a game unnecessarily hard for yourself, e.g. by playing on a higher difficulty or by refusing to use certain tools the game gave you because the other way seemed like cheating? I, for one, took 3 years to beat XCOM because I couldn't bring myself not to play it on Iron Man.
Nice. I think the very first episode of Daft has me talking about the period of my life where I played everything with hard on And hard.
I beg your pardon?
It was with hard on, you know.
With a difficulty.
Yes. I don't know. I don't understand. What did you think?
I don't know what I thought either. Carry on.
Yeah, and I just found it really interesting because any game you play,
you can tell if it's good or not.
I don't know if I've done the spiel before, but yeah, Far Cry 2 on Infamous, which is the hardest difficulty setting, is actually. If you don't know why people talk about Far Cry 2 being good, play on Infamous and it just becomes like DayZ or something. It's unreal. Also, GTA with the minimap turned off is hot tamales. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's funny how like it is the test. Like that's why when I knew Bayonetta was amazing, was like I completed it and thought that was a fun game. And then it was like, hey, do you want to start the game again with these items and play it on hard? I was like, yeah. And then within like 10 minutes, I was like, holy fuck. This is an amazing game.
Yeah.
Just because you realise it is so tight. And that's why I always have no respect for anybody who says, I always play games and complete video games on hard. It's like, well,
who says that?
You do get people on the internet being like, it's like a pride thing for them. They think themselves as being good at video games, they always play them on hard. It's like, no way. Like Mass Effect games, for example, I'm just like, until the third game where they actually had combat that was fun, it was just like, easy. Like, I don't want to get stopped. I don't want to slow down.
We talked about this last time with Pillars of Eternity.
Yeah, you know, I've been playing more Pillars of Eternity. I won't talk about it yet. I'll talk about it when Jim's on sometime because he's a fan and I'll get further in and we can have a conversation. But anyway, I've been playing that with like super dad mode and it's hilarious.
Dad mode?
That's not what it's called, but it basically is just like, you don't have time for this, do you? So let's just speed you through it.
What about you, Joe? You played anything with hard on?
Well, I've definitely played games with hard-on. The thing with hard-ons, the thing that's interesting is the certain tools, refusing to use certain tools the game gave you, which is it's not for the same reason, but I played through Monster Hunter 4 never changing my weapon because I really liked the charge blade and I didn't want to use anything else, even though certain monsters, that's just like a bad decision.
I know what you mean. And Monster Hunter 4, particularly using the insect glaive, is kind of cheating.
Oh, yeah, fuck the insect glaive. I don't like it.
But
oh, man, I've remembered a good one, which is I refused to use fast travel in Skyrim, and then the instant I did, I became bored of the game.
No, I know that one.
Because, it's such a absorbing and engrossing game.
I didn't know you could fast travel in Skyrim, and actually the same thing happened to me. As soon as I realised you could and started doing it,
everything falls apart.
It just fell apart, immediately. It was just a rubbish game.
Very weird.
It was so fast after like 30 hours of quite enjoying myself. Mad. But I'm trying to think, my favourite, of course, was Cave Story, with the fact that you could purposefully not accept. They're like, hey, do you want the machine gun? And you go, no. And then you go, okay. And then it means you have to use the pistol instead of the machine gun. And then at the very end of the game, or towards the end, the guy who you stole the pistol from at the start is like, hey, is that my pistol? And you're like, yes. And he's like, oh, it's fine, you can keep it. But look, I'll do it up for you. And suddenly you just get this like god gun. I love that it like purposefully allows you to do that obtuse thing, and knowing that you're going to do that Zelda thing of being like, thinking that you don't have a choice about this conversation. You're like, do you want the machine gun? No. I'm like, oh, come on, I think you do. And this it just goes, okay, bye.
Firewatch as well. People have been having a lot of fun.
I wish I'd known about that.
Yeah, you disable the beacon that shows where you are on the map, and
so
then
you just have to use the map and the compass.
Have to do a little more orienteering. Yeah,
I wish I'd known about that, because that would have been like,
just play Long Dark if you really want to get lost in a forest and go, where am I?
Yeah, but that's dangerous, and I quite like just getting lost in. Anyway.
I wonder if Long Dark has dad mode. Or Eskimo mode.
Don't know. I mean, with Pillars, it's just like the story actually gets quite enjoyable, but you just need to do quite a lot of fighting first. And it is a shame, though, because I'm just blasting through all these systems now and just like immediately like scavenging through equipment and stuff to be like, is it a sword that does fire damage? Because if it isn't, I'm just not interested. And whenever I level up, just being like, what spells just do the most damage? Like, they've got all these systems that I'm now just completely circumventing. I'm just like, do not care. And that's kind of liberating.
Yeah, it's liberating, but also, like, do you not find it slightly depressing in the sense of, like, you turn these systems off because the game doesn't need them, and then you suddenly see how many hours and craft and time and how much time the game expects from you to wrestle with these systems, and then you realise none of them are the point.
But I think that's not entirely true, because what I've realised about it, and what I think is why it's quite a very successful Kickstarter game in this regard, is that it does matter to some people, and for those people it's there.
Okay.
And it's like they're archaic and kind of annoying for me because they're just too detailed, but some people love that stuff, and for them they're going to do the complete opposite, and they're not going to be playing on super easy, super dad mode. They're going to be playing on like the brutal, difficult, extra hard mode.
Yeah, this is...
And if people want that, they can play the game like that. But for me, I can still get quite a long game experience out of just having a story thing.
I don't like anything wasted. Like, I'll cut mold off a slice of bread and then still put it in the toaster and eat it. because I don't want to throw bread away.
You know, I throw it away, yeah. I kind of feel with this, it's such a
Joe, that was a good nod from Joe, like he's been there.
I'm with you.
I put it in the bin, man. Fuck it. But I think this is such a big loaf of bread, this game, that I think you can comfortably throw half of it in the bin.
Don't do that!
And then have a really nice toast on your own.
People are just looking contentedly at the bread in the bin.
What you threw away.
I'll just take a single pillar of eternity. I don't care about the rest.
Just the one for me.
That's the best joke in the podcast. There we go.
But yeah, one thing I would say actually about saying refusing to use certain things, one thing I am quite strict about, and I'm increasingly finding myself caring more and more about, is not changing the audio when you're playing a Dark Souls game or Bloodborne. Because people always say to me, the bosses of fights are really easy if you turn the music off, because you can relax, you don't get stressed. It's like, yeah, but you're fucking...
Okay.
You're changing the ecosystem.
No, Matt, listen to yourself, right?
I care about
You refuse to turn this off because the music is a vital and integral part of the experience. And without it, it's absolutely not Dark Souls.
I know where this is going.
Neither of you play
No, I have. I have
with the music.
And you know what? It changes it. You're right. You're right. But actually, I am glad that I played it mostly without the music. And actually, I'd recommend to people, turn the music off.
No!
Yes. No. Yes, I'm saying this, right? What I'd say is play it with the music off, and then when you're almost done with it, when you think, I'm kind of had enough of this, switch it on and play a little bit with the music on, because it's fucking hilarious. But
because what, you assume it's so much darker?
Well, yeah, in mine, it was like me playing it silently, like with the sound off, just playing it like, whilst half watching TV and in the same room as my partner, and just getting so wonderfully engrossed and stressed about the life of this fucking group of people and this trying to keep this tribe alive. And now I've played it like on Steam with the sound. You're spot on. It's this ridiculous thing if you just have this like really tense meeting and then you just say, and you say, I know the boy didn't mean any harm, but he must be killed. And it's like immediately it's like anyway, now that we've killed that boy, let's go back to Jolly Village Town. And it just punctuates the game in such a fucking stupid way.
Oh man.
And it's brilliant, but it does kind of ruin everything.
But okay, I mean, I guess it's like Stockholm Syndrome, because I only ever had the music, like I never got the opportunity to realise how ridiculous it is. I get what you're saying.
I think it's still good, and actually maybe it fits the tone of the game better.
I like
with
it because
I
like the Iron Age sort of instrumentation of it, because it's all drums and flutes, and I like that because it makes me think I am an old person.
And maybe also it does fit the tone. I mean, it is a world where, like, people do have to die and tough decisions have to be made, but in between, it's largely punctuated by people just having like feasts.
You know what? It's Iron Age. It's like it's simultaneously happy and like pagan, and also sad and bloody, and we can have both of these things.
Yeah, I think so. But you're right. It is fucking really funny. I did laugh out loud when it first happened, and then was like, oh, I get it now. Yeah. I get it. So yeah. We'll do one more question. Not really getting through many questions, but they're good ones. So
we're having fun, man.
Recently read a story from FromSoft's Miyazaki.
Who's this?
This is from Ryan Maxey. Thank you. I'm bad at my job. Talking about how in the co-op in Souls games was inspired by an experience in which his car got stuck on a slope in the snow, but another car came up behind him and pushed him over the slope. Ryan, that was cheating. He should not have let that guy do that. He should have pushed his own car over the slope.
He should have got out and ejected the other guy from his car.
Yeah, that would have been fine. Stolen his humanity from his chest. Anyway, he pushed him over the slope. He was thankful, but sad that he wouldn't be able to stop and thank him without just getting stuck again. Hence the temporary moments of friendship in Souls games. That's nice. What are some of the favourite examples of developers taking inspiration from life experience in this sort of obtuse... We're not developers. You can't expect us to pull anecdotes out of our arse.
I do have one good one.
Excellent.
I'm glad you read this question out so boldly and trusting your friends would catch you. I read a replay, which is an amazing... It's the best history of video games I've ever read, and you should read it just because if you're listening to this podcast, you almost certainly don't know anywhere near enough about Pong. But it's got a bit on Peter Molyneux and his early days in game development, and...
I think I know. Oh no, maybe I don't. Carry on.
No,
I don't understand why I was interrupting in the first place.
And if you do know, you should jump in because this could be fun. But he's making a sort of a town building game. He's learning to code because he was literally selling books and that wasn't working out for him. So he's like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm gonna jack that in. I'm gonna make a video game and make tons of money. And so it's loads of little people in a little village, and but he can't work out the code for pathfinding. But what he can do in the editing tools is like, it's really easy to raise and lower. Like, so if the guy can't get around a hill, if your little person can't walk around a hill, it's like, well, you can lower the hill so he can just walk through. And then he realised, like, well, I'll never have to code pathfinding if I make the game all about raising and lowering terrain. That was populous.
Yeah.
And it kind of... So the two edges of this is like, I've always said, like, that sums up everything that is, like, funny and silly but also annoying about Molyneux as a designer. But my friend...
It's also just how game development often works.
Yeah, my friend turned it around and said, like, yes, but if that same story was of a designer you liked, you would tell that as a celebration of innovation.
Yeah. I think that's just generally how it works. When you have a problem, you think, do you either fix the problem or do you just create something new that makes it not a problem anymore?
I do think...
Which is, like, amazing approach in game dev, because, like, imagine if you did that in your house. Like, my shower's leaking. Oh, well, I'll create this series of pipes so the water goes down here.
Oh, man, that's the Dwarf Fortress thing.
Yeah.
The way you can irrigate land in Dwarf Fortress is you... this is the simplest way. You can't, like, dig a well. That's complicated shit. But what you can do is you dig a hole... And then you tell the dwarves to fill the hole with water. So they'll get buckets and fill it with water. Beneath that hole, though, on the level beneath, is your farm. So, like, through the hole, you've built a cave farm, and then above it is a hole, and the dwarves are like, oh, I'll keep filling up this hole. Doesn't seem to be working, but I'll do it forever. As they pour buckets of water down the hole, not knowing that your farm is beneath it. That's how you irrigate into your fortress.
When am I going to fill this hole? This is ridiculous.
This question ties in with what we were talking about last week, which is I don't think... Developers should take inspiration more from stuff outside of games, but especially indie games we're seeing now, like the big indie hits is all stuff like that is either tonally or narratively inspired by video games. Like, we've got, Beginner's Guide and Dr. Langstrom, and also the visual styles aren't inspired by, like, for example, Cubism or whatever. They're inspired by this video game I played when I was 9.
And here's an interesting problem, right? Is that at the moment what we're seeing is lots of really talented devs, and it's a double-tailed thing, right? First of all, like, if you want to make a game about experiences and about, like, your thing, you have to be a really small team, like preferably like just a tiny team, and that's why, like, I remember, like, it used to be the most thing that developers would always hate to answer in interviews if they worked in big teams is, what were your inspirations? Because they're just sitting there going, we're 400 people. Like, what do you mean? Like, it was, I was guilty of asking that question as well, because you just want them to say that they'd seen the same films you had, and that's what you want. Everyone wants to feel like they are thinking the same thing. Anyway, it means you have to be a small team in the first place to even have the luxury of being able to directly input your influences in something. Secondly, though, because at the moment, like, there are very few developers who are, like, almost these singular forces anymore because of this. Lots of the cool little indie interesting things that are happening are all young people, and it means we're getting lots of games where a lot of the time the experiences are about being young people. So we're getting things like, Oxenfree and stuff about, you're getting lots of teen things and lots of things that are, like, reflective on teen life or childhood.
Heartbreak, right?
Yeah, and that's cool, but at the same time it's one of these things where I kind of feel like you get, I mean, this is not to be, like, ageist, but you do, as you get older, you have more interesting experiences and more interesting thoughts on all of your experiences because you've just got more to read from and you have more thoughts. And I kind of wonder if, unfortunately, a lot of the time, because it is a very unstable industry, like making indie games, often it's something where generally the people who are doing it, the people getting out there, are younger, whereas people are older, they need the stability. And it's this...
Yeah, well, certainly the barriers for entry for making games are ridiculous, like, in terms of, like, using the tools and stuff.
And so I'm just hoping, basically, that at the moment we have, like, tons of really young, talented indies. I'm just hoping that in 15 years' time, like, a lot of them are still doing it, rather than it being like, well, I had fun doing that, but now I've got to go and do something else because I need the stability, etc., etc. Because I think it's interesting that we're seeing lots of people conveying these experiences, but not to be harsh about them, a lot of the experiences they're conveying just aren't that interesting.
Well, I disagree. I think teenage fiction is fine, but I do think that it would be great to see them grow up and write about other things.
It's awesome. It's just, unfortunately, after a while, it does become a little bit trite, because the thing that you start to realise as you get older is that your experiences are largely the same as lots of other people's experiences. And actually, as you get kind of older, you start to realise that maybe the experiences you have, like the ones that are just, like, a bit, not yours, because you're still sharing with loads of people, but the ones that are a bit more yours, you don't have lots of those. And it isn't like you're this unique kind of vision on the world. You maybe have like a couple of things that you can talk about. And it's interesting stuff like that game, you know, I still haven't had the balls to play it myself because it's too close to home, but that Dragon Cancer, it's like, that's the sort of thing. It's like, you know, like not everyone can make a game like that.
Yeah.
And you start to realize when you get to be like 30 or, you know, older, 40, whatever, you maybe have like, somebody said to you, what can you do something about that like most people can't? Anyone with half a head would say like maybe have one or two ideas that like that's something they feel that they could convey something about that most people couldn't. And unfortunately, like unless you've had a really weird life, a lot of people who are in their 20s, they often don't have that yet because you just got to be around.
No, I mean I agree. Like I mean, just spending time with Meg Joanne through Road 80 Days, but like she travelled a lot as a kid. And, you know, has a background that isn't, you know, sort of like trad, straight white male as well. And
sure.
all of that is in 80 Days. Like,
yeah.
And obviously she's a phenomenal writer as well. But, you know, it's just an example of of the results you can get when you pull in experiences that aren't outside of what is traditional in games.
Yeah, everyone has that thing.
That was all really lovely. Can I tell a story about Peter Molyneux and baked beans?
Yes!
Do you know this story?
No.
I'm stealing both this story and the observation about it from Rich Stanton. So go and look it up if you want to read the actual, really well-written version of this story. But apparently, when Peter Molyneux was starting out, well before he got into, you know, even the popular stuff, he had a company called Taurus, and Taurus, part of their business was exporting baked beans to the Middle East.
I love this story already.
Yeah, no, I know this, but it's great.
Commodore wanted to talk to a networking firm, I believe, called Taurus. And unfortunately, they picked Taurus and got in contact with Peter Molyneux and offered him 10 Amigas. And apparently, at this point, he said... he had an angel on one shoulder saying, tell the truth, and he had a devil, a much bigger devil on the other shoulder, saying, I believe the phrase was, get the machines, apologise later. And apparently that's how it started.
That's how he
total
acquired the
mix-up.
computers?
He lied, said he was Taurus, got Amigas, and started working on them. And that's how Peter Molyneux's here. And if we were to extrapolate from that experience on the life of Peter Molyneux, it's that exaggeration and lies are a key part of how he makes games.
Oh my god.
And that's amazing.
The thing we should also point out, if people haven't seen this, the latest, not the latest Humble Bundle, because there's a new one with Sun Sea that looks pretty good to me. But there was a bundle put together, and all the proceeds, or most of them, were going to the guy who won Curiosity.
The guy who was the god, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so like, you know, they would, because he won Curiosity and should have been a god and goddess in this life-changing experience. Obviously, Peter Molyneux failed, and there's that unbelievable Simon Parkin interview with the kid who won it, who's Scottish and sort of not unassuming, but yeah. Clearly.
I thought it was
Wesley in Poole.
Oh,
Or
right.
they both
No. You're completely right. It was Wesley. I'm sorry, Wesley. But yeah, like, so now there's a bundle.
You know,
which was going to give him like 10 grand
He's
or something.
in
Eternal
Not
Cynic.
the Hero as well, I think.
Yeah, eternal cynic that I am, though. I remember at the first time when he first got announced that he'd won Curiosity. And I thought, and when the video message said, like, the prize that you've won is priceless, I immediately thought, oh, well, then it's going to be worthless. You know, because that's just how I look at it. And I'm like, right, so it's not money, which means it's Molyneux's priceless is probably worthless. And it's turned out to be pretty much worthless. I love that even he doesn't care. They're still trying to kind of wheel him on as being like, yeah, no, like, you know, we've patched it up with him now, and you know, we're gonna still make good and stuff. And he's just like, I don't care. I really don't care. He's like, I'm just done with it now. He's like, I was upset for a while, but now I just don't care. And it's just like he just doesn't want anything to do with it.
It's like
he sounds like a really good kid.
It's like the end of some high school drama where, like, the kid who no one liked but had something to offer got taken in by the bad kids, and then actually he made better friends out of that, and so he's gone with them, and now the bad kids are like, oh, we can get you in. And he's like, nah,
I'm just down with it.
I'm in Not a Hero now, mate. Yeah,
it's a game that is finished.
Oh my god, what a
strange.
What a journey we've been on this episode. We've the horror kids movies. It's been great.
It's the Horror Kids movie special.
Hot Potato Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Potato Podcast. If you've really enjoyed this, you can do a bunch of things. You can go to, we haven't said this in a while, but you can go to iTunes and give us a little review on there. Write us a little thing, click on the little star button. Obviously, the 5 is the one that you want to click on because, you know, You just do. And yeah, that's good because more people who haven't heard of us might click on it when they're bored listening to a popular podcast.
Crazy thing though, Matt. If people write text in those review boxes, it massively weights the discoverability of our podcast.
Does it?
Yeah. So what they want to do is give us 5 stars and then talk about when they were most disappointed by Peter Molyneux. In the little text box. Also, if you want, if you're just craving more video and podcasterly nonsense, if you want to see my Street Fighter podcast, becoming the best. I'm changing it again. I'm going to be the best Street Fighter player in the world.
Oh my god, Quinn! Come on, that's just not even realistic.
If you want to find out whether I succeed or not, you'll find all of that on coolghosts.net.
Yeah, it's a great website. It's by coincidence our website that we run.
That is funny, isn't it?
But you should check it out. It's the home of Daft Souls. I really need to get used to saying things like this without joking inside of my bed.
It is the home of Daft Souls, and also currently a completely awesome Invisible Ink playthrough.
Yes, God, that's unbelievably still working. Anyway,
it's crazy. Where can people find more Joe? Do you have? Can we reveal the Hot Joe news?
We can't reveal the Hot Joe news. I've got Hot Joe news coming. One day we'll talk about that.
You'll have to come. You'll have to
actually.
Swing by.
When's this coming out?
That's going to make it sound like he's joining us, and he's not. Unfortunately,
no, I'm not. When's this coming out?
Next Monday.
Fuck it. I'm going to IGN. I'm going to be news editor. So
there we are.
That's Hot Joe news, and I've got a podcast called Chat Very Good.
You have. But hopefully you're going to be in London more, so we'll have you on Daft Souls more as well. Which will be awesome. But yeah, so do all of those things in any order that you wish to. And also, if you really, really do like Daft Souls, then you could consider supporting us on Patreon.
Do you think, listening to 71 episodes, is it now?
71,
do you think, if, dear reader, you have got $1 worth of enjoyment? That's like a few cents an episode. If you think that is fair and just, you can support us at patreon.com/coolghosts.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it.
$1, and then you're done. You're off the hook.
He's a cheap man. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the Potato Special, and we'll see you next time. Potatoes, unite!
Hey!
So hot!
I thought... Oh, that was rubbish.
Let's do it again. Potatoes, unite! Hoorah!
You said do it again, but we didn't know what we were doing again.
I didn't tell you. It's a surprise.
Don't edit this. Keep it all in.
Okay. Bye.
God.